A very warm welcome to all of you. Before we start the session, I had some very interesting things to share, and I don't know if all of you know about it. I've been telling everywhere since last 1 week, wherever I've been going, is that it was very startling for me to get this number, that there were 70 billion downloads of apps in 2013 only. Now that's like 10 times the number of people we have on this planet. So that 70 billion happened this year, and the app publishers and the app, the ecosystem made $7 billion, and that's the number only for this year. So it's an amazing number. It just shows that the market is growing, and content is a very significant part of it. So let's have a conversation with players in this market who are doing great job in content. I think all of you will know people, the panelists over here today, so we'll ask them on what it takes to build sustainable and scalable content business, leveraging mobile, leveraging video, and of course, ask about investments. Quickly, before we start, again, from an investment perspective, there's, there are a lot of perception, but last week itself, there were 4 investments which happened in content business itself, and they were large investments. So the conversation which has started in Silicon Valley now is that, content is cool. So they were saying enterprise is cool. So there's some kind of conversation which has started that content is cool. So maybe we'll hear something like this soon in India. So let's start the conversation. Let me introduce the panelists, though they need no introduction. Girish, founder of Maxter, which is a digital magazine store. And I think all of you must have heard the crazy number of downloads Maxter has got. I think last it was 15 million downloads. Is Girish. Pankaj is from 500 startups, and we want to know how 500 startups is looking at content and investments. Vamshi needs no introduction, from Apalya. They have, they have been pioneer in video streaming and pay on demand TV on mobile. And Vamshi also raised in this space $20 million, which goes on to validate that there is something exciting happening in this space. With that, let me ask all of you one question. Let's begin with this. What do you think, and how do you think will content become a sustainable and scalable business? Maybe all of you can slightly shift. Girish, you can move that side, so all of you have.
Yeah, sure. I think content has always been a very viable business. It's been around for, I think, hundreds of years, or I think even from the day human beings started to communicate. So I think content business is always going to be there. I think the challenge is how to make money out of it in going forward. I think people have been making money in newspapers, books, in the printed world for hundreds of years now. And now with the advent of internet, mobile and all that, and especially with the World Wide Web, which gave everything away for free, starting with free email and then everything else. If anything is online, nobody wants to pay for it anymore. So we come from a more text space, that is magazines, books, news. You keep hearing about Newsweek has stopped printing, and newspapers are going out of business. So our thought on that is, whatever we've started doing, we started in a freemium model. So our app, which we've got like millions of downloads, is free to download, but whatever is inside the app is you need to pay and buy. So I think that's something that I think is a kind of a common theme with more successful startups who have not just given it away free and hoping that advertising will come and monetize for you, which is always cool to say and maybe even pitch, but I think it doesn't happen today. And most people want, especially when things are on the web, people don't want to pay. So once they're on mobile or a tablet, since they're already spending like 40, 50,000, 30,000 to buy that device, the propensity to buy is very high. Even on Maxter, nearly 90% of our buyers are on tablets directly rather than from the web. So I think our thought on that is you need to have a freemium model or a more pay model, And then as you kind of expand, and then you can add free stuff into it and try to monetize it using advertising and stuff like that.
Okay. Thanks, Girish.
You should probably go first.
So, we run a service called mobile TV and some other on-demand services in India. So most of the mobile TV services which you are talking about, which are powered by which you see from Airtel or Tata or Reliance or Vodafone, all those services are run by us. So we are in between, two major, giants, right? One is the content side, and then there's the telcos, or the service providers, and then there's the end consumer, right? So, frankly, I think this whole question about, can you build a sustainable business model around content, and can you actually grow that business, I think is very interesting, because, I think what we felt is from day one, we had already, built this habit to the consumer that, this content is being paid for. Because if you look at TV or any other content, it is being paid for. It's just a way in how which you're making the payments is very, very important, basically. And that's why, the service provider market of the business in this part of the world, especially in India, has been very successful. You see a lot of business models, evolving around that space. What we have seen is, just to give you an idea, we were able to build a business close to 100 crore in gross revenue across all these operators. So just to tell you that, people do pay. It is about how you're creating that convenience and the quality of the experience in buying. So if you look at, I was just mentioning to Shradha and the rest of the folks here, see, everyone pays today. It's not that, people are not paying. It's how they're paying is very important, right? So I look at people, who's driving an auto or anyone, basically, he's actually getting content onto his phone. He's not a guy who's going onto the internet and, getting into pirated sites and downloading. No, he's not doing that. He's actually going to a local guy who's a mobile shop repair guy or someone and says, hey, I want like 50 songs. I need like so many 100 videos or whatever it is. And he pays 50 rupees or 100 rupees to that guy. It's not a question of the 10 rupees or the 50 rupees or whether they have the money or not. It is about the convenience part, right? And the content part is where the challenge is. So most of us, mostly, we try to, misunderstand that part of the business, and we always, I keep hearing this all the time, people saying, hey, why would I pay for content? Actually, I'm not even worried about the people who go to torrents and all that stuff. That's a different set of users. And even with torrents, I think the challenge is that you don't have a better way to actually buy content. If you have a better way to buy content, I don't think you would waste your time even sitting for 8 hours in torrents. Because, if I give you a facility where I ask you to pay you 20 rupees for a new movie and it downloads in 30 minutes, obviously you would pay. You won't wait like 8 hours, 10 hours to, download in torrents and, figure out that it's crap quality and then again go figure out from somewhere else. So, we are talking about elements. We need to talk from a consumer standpoint. We need to really think how we are going to monetize content in a better way by creating that experience. Typically in India, biggest challenge is about, how do I pay and, what is the currentness of the content. So when you talk from a content standpoint, there's a lot of challenges, right? Because you see something like a movie which gets into theatrical is immediately put on broadcast, because the content viability in theatrical is only 2 weeks. After that, it has to go on to broadcast, because there's big money involved in broadcast, which is close to $10 to $12 million, which is being spent by a satellite guy to put it on broadcast. So unless I give you current content, right, which means a movie which has come into theaters should be available right now on the mobile phone, then you see the validity of the content and the this thing to pay for it, right? So now, but you will have challenge from the content partner standpoint as to why would you want to give that content so current, because then huge money involved. The same issue which I think Netflix came up day before yesterday, saying that the next level is we're going to go and start releasing movies directly. onto the Netflix play, which means they're coming after theatrical now. You're getting bigger screens at homes, great audio systems, great networks, right now. But Netflix people are paying. So they are going to pay. So I think we need to address those issues to build a sustainable model. I think that's
Great points. Yeah, thank you so much, Vamshi. Pankaj, you would like to add?
Sure. There's not much to say because both Girish and Vamshi have said everything, but content is king. And I think from an investor perspective, there's always interest in investing in premium content that can be monetized. And I think that's the key, is understanding that advertising is not a monetization strategy at the beginning. Advertising only works when you have very large numbers. If you can figure out a way to monetize early on, even if it's small numbers, but getting a decent amount of usage, that will attract investors. And as you grow that, even more so. I think the real problem here is friction in the process of purchasing content, as Vamshi was talking about. The friction is the biggest problem that content providers face, is how do you remove the friction so that people can easily purchase content, whether it's video, music, movies, text, whatever it is. If you can figure out ways to minimize that, that's where people will be willing to pay for content, whether it's small amounts or even in some cases larger amounts. If you can purchase a movie for the cost of a movie ticket and you can have your whole family watch it at home, why wouldn't you, right? So I think friction is really the biggest challenge in the process of purchasing content. High quality content people will pay for. There are plenty of people that have gone paid only and they are generating revenue. All right? People were talking about Netflix blowing up and dying. No. Netflix is going to the next level. 10% of the US population is a Netflix subscriber. That's pretty significant, right? And you're not paying a huge amount. You're paying $8 a month. That's not a large amount of money, right? But Netflix, as Vamshi was talking about, has been able to produce their own content. They've brought high quality shows that are only available on Netflix. Now they're going to be bringing movies out. That is high quality content that more and more people are going to be willing to pay for. In India, our challenge is we don't have the bandwidth to run Netflix, right? So it isn't the problem isn't the content. The problem is the friction around consuming that content and getting access to that content.
Great, thanks, Pankaj. Before we move, how many of you here are in content business? Wow, that's a significant number. So the question to Girish and Vamshi, both of you, is many people are figuring out and are in similar spaces as you both are, or trying to get there, or something similar to what you're doing, but many have not been successful and not gone on to build kind of ventures you have built. Give us some insight into what you did differently and what has worked in this space for you.
I think the key thing was to convince partners in the ecosystem, which is the content guys first, because obviously without content you don't have a story, basically you don't have anything to sell. So but convincing content partners and making them be realistic about the expectations to expect from this side of the market is very important.
Okay.
And making them as partners rather than looking at them as because a lot of the content partners today also feel that they need to get into the digitized world, they need to get into this part of the business, but their mindset is still more traditional kind of a mindset, where they still think that I need to get paid for this, I need more money for this and all that stuff. So you will have those challenges. So early on when we started, we went to Times Group. We have close to 200 media companies right now as partners, but all are very reasonable people, so it's not like they're not reasonable. So we just started showing them slow growth and built it as partnership. So we started very slow. We had like 5 channels, 10 channels, slowly started growing. At the same time started growing revenue slowly, and as we started building confidence, we started adding more and more content. And then investors also look at like what we're just discussing. I think even small signs that people are paying and consuming content, I think is going to start triggering investors to put money by which you can actually go and bring in more content
Yeah.
and then start building that model out. So it's not going to happen overnight. It took like 7 years for us to get where we are, but it's going to happen. So you just need to look at how you can, slowly solve those problems. And the biggest thing, as I said, is one is on the content side. You need to have the best content, but it'll come over a period of time. You start with what you have and try to go after a niche segment, but prove certain points in that area. But again, remove the friction points, which means you look at, using service providers or iOS kind of operating systems where, people are easily able to pay and all that
Yeah.
stuff. So remove those friction points. Small signs, you should show very small signs, basically.
And Vamshi, one quick question is that do you need a big sales team to do that, because you have to go and meet all the traditional media houses and
Personally, till date, I actually manage all the content partnerships. So there's only even though you talk about 200 channels or so many movie houses and all that, there's like 15 people, 20 people you'll have to meet.
Okay.
And that's a relationship you have to build anyways. So.
Okay, great. Thank you. Girish?
For us, I think content partner is very important for any content-based app. So we have got a couple of things that we did, I think, correctly in the early days. One was we have a self-service system where publishers from anywhere in the world can sign up and pretty much make their magazines or books go live like a self-publishing platform. But obviously the big publishers, like if you were in India, you say India Today Group, Outlook Group, Malayalam Manorama Group, unless you go meet them, they won't sign anything. So they need to really meet you or see what you are. And I think that's where I think Vamshi was saying there are about 15, 20 people that have to be met. And I think that we did as well. But we had the self-publishing platform. So anyone, anywhere in the world, we've got sign-ups from Latin America, China, Japan. And we are not really, that's the other thing we did was we didn't look at India. We looked at a global market. That was something different. Most companies in India are looking at the Indian market and they feel, if they go global, will they be too big? And I think a lot of the investors whom we met said, you please start with India and prove and then go to the rest of the world. I think we did it slightly differently. We started off in New York, but then we started going pretty much worldwide. So, and the other thing we did was we chose the device first. We didn't have a website to start with. So if you go to maxtra.com, it would have a blank page which says, if you're a publisher, sign up. Right? So we started off with an iPad app. So that was the first thing that we did. And we started getting downloads just on the app. And people started buying, and that was very encouraging. And from our own, I use an iPhone. So I know that if there's something good, I will buy. Right, and I think that was me being a user and us having an app kind of was easy for us to start the whole traction. And then as we got more content and people were searching for that content and found Maxter, and our downloads kept going up. So I think it's a mix of making the right choices, and I think we did that in the early days. And then of course it's only content. So now we are just adding in a normal bookstore in print in like Bangalore, you'll find maybe 50 to 100 magazines in the largest bookstore, and we've got now 3,000 from 33 countries, from some 40 languages from all over the world, and now we're adding books as well. So it's like you said, creating sustainable model. Magazines alone may not sustain our shop, so we are adding more content as we go along.
Girish, I have a question. Is that, you've managed very significant downloads from all over the world. So one challenge which startups face is that how do you get that? So one is you have a very amazing app which people want, but how do you get that app out in the market? What was your...
See, I think discoverability is very important. So people need to find your app.
Yeah.
There are a million, I think you said 70 billion downloads, and I think there are on between iPhone and iPad, there are about 1 million apps.
Yeah.
Right. Even in 2011, when we started like 2 years ago, there were a ton of apps, and when you search, you will never find anything.
Yeah.
And Apple only gives you some 20 keywords that you can use. Of course, we used magazine, we used read, and all the usual keywords, but we also had a lot of content which people could not find. So one of the things that was there in Apple is their in-app purchase system also helps in finding the content as well.
Okay.
So we used the entire Apple's in-app purchase for Maxter, and people when they search for India Today, they find Maxter. When they search for Femina, they find Maxter. So when they search for an Outlook or Filmfare or whatever, they end up finding our app. And so that was a time when we really got a huge amount of traction. So you need to know the platform, you need to know where people are searching. And since we are ourselves consumers of all this content, we know where we are searching. People don't search on Google and come inside an app. They search in the app stores. So that's where you need to really have your app discoverable. So, and we kind of leverage Apple's own search technology for our benefit.
Okay, great. Do we have time? Is investments going to happen in India in content space, Pankaj? What do you think?
Yes. The short answer is yes. I can't say when it's going to start happening. I think most investors, as most people complain about, are risk averse, and that's true. Investors are in the business of making money, not taking risk, contrary to what people believe. So I think most investors want to see some success emerge. What that success is, I don't think anyone's defined it yet.
Yeah.
So I think it will happen. It could be anybody. It could be your story. It could be, another small video publisher. We're starting to see very interesting things happening with content and commerce being merged together. And we've invested in a couple of companies in the U.S. that are doing things like that. We're open to companies in India doing things along those lines as well. But we want to see something emerge, right? I think the problem that most investors are seeing is that people have great ideas. It's the execution that is taking a lot more time and effort than they would like. And that's why there hasn't been a lot of investment in the content space so far in India. The other problem is the friction that everyone was talking about. Even if you do execute, bandwidth, payment systems, all these things are still a problem in India. And that is what is holding a lot of investors back from saying, okay, everything else is great, but if you can't get people to actually process the payment quickly and easily, even those kind of off-the-cuff purchases that people might do, you lose those, right? Because it's difficult. Whereas with iOS and the Apple Store and things like that, it's very easy to make a purchase, right? So even that split decision, oh, that looks really cool, I'm going to buy this right now. Oh, damn, I bought that. I wasted 100 rupees, right? Like buyer's remorse may kick in, but you've already purchased it. And then you might say, oh, well, it wasn't such a bad purchase. Removing that friction, I think, is really important before we start seeing significant money flowing into the content space in India.
Okay. Girish and Vamshi, one more, maybe our last question before we make it open.
You can have payment for 5 minutes.
Okay. So, then we can do the Q&A only. Oh, okay. Last question is that, if you look at SlideShare and a lot of Indian founder-led companies in content or content facilitation space, so they go outside India and then it becomes significantly easier to get the distribution going across markets, and it becomes easier to attract different kinds of investors. And you went to New York, and so do you think it works, like being there, at least when you are in this space, to be somewhere in Silicon Valley, or to make it slightly smoother and earlier adoption easy?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, I think New York was a strategic choice because all of world publishing is in New York or London. So that's kind of the first reason why we chose New York as a place to set up. And everyone said, US VCs are easy to convince and there's a lot of money flowing. We raised $3 million from a VC in Bangalore, by the way. So it was not New York or the US or Silicon Valley, which actually funded Maxter. We are very proud to say that our product is made in India by Indians and literally reaching more than 200 countries, the users. I just found out a few days ago that we have 2 downloads from Antarctica. So I think we're really trying to make this made in India product go global. I think it's very relevant to the product conclave. I think we've got great engineers, great minds. I think more investment needs to come in as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's all kind of coming along. So from our perspective, I think being in New York adds a lot of value. It didn't start off being that way, but now, of course, as a New York company, our valuation itself is better than if I was just maybe a Chennai company or a Bangalore company or a Hyderabad or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Great insight. Vamshi?
I think it really depends on the market you're going after. We primarily chose to go after the Indian market space,
Okay.
so our focus is completely in India. But I agree with basically that on Indian investment, when it comes to investment, I mean, all my capital raised is in India itself. The only thing is, from a valuation standpoint, maybe you'll get better valuations in Valley.
Okay. Great. So can